guess just
All right, everybody. We
all
don't.
right.
Welcome to Dr. Politics and Political Architect Show. We apologize if you really enjoy the standard opening, but uh, Dwight controls that, and he didn't leave that. He didn't bequeath that to us for this week. And I believe that Dwight is off at the state Republican convention, and maybe our regular viewers have taken a trip over there as well. So I'm not sure exactly who's going to be joining us tonight, but we thought we'd at least try to keep the show going in Dwight's absence. So I'm Don Irvine, and as you can see, is David Shepard. So
Uh,
2/3 of the regular Doctor crew are here,
right.
and we will. I don't know how many times we will digress to other things. I think David, when you and I do this, we stay a
Mm.
little more on track.
It's funny, and my hint is never picked up on. But when Dwight gives final thoughts, I keep it really short. But it doesn't really. No one else imitates me, I guess. But uh, no, it's good to be on. I'm glad we're still doing the show. So it's been a busy, important week. In part because you had the 100 days for Trump. And in fact, I'm going to a 100 days party. I've never been to a 100 days celebration party, but we're doing it. Some Fairfax, I don't know if they're Tea Party folks, rank and file Republican folks, but they're just going to do a party in Fairfax, like the American Legion Hall or something, and we're just going to celebrate Trump's first 100 days. Um,
Is that taking
so it's
place this weekend?
tomorrow, yeah, tomorrow. And I wish I had the info, but tomorrow in the
So like
evening.
so like on the 105th day or something like that.
Yeah, well, it was a Saturday, so it's a close to Saturday, I
Yeah,
guess.
yeah, yeah.
And you probably wanted to cross the 100 days and not before, but you wanted to
Right.
cross it. So
Yeah.
the first
No, no,
Saturday,
no.
cross it.
Yeah, no, I
And
mean,
so it should be a good 100 days. I wrote a 100 days piece. And for me, I think the border number one, Doge, I put number two. Tariff thing, it's still in play. And the other thing we don't know is the big, beautiful bill in terms of budget reconciliation. We don't know that yet. And really, I don't think, not that Trump hasn't had an effect in 100 days, but the next 100 days will probably be more important because then you're going to have the budget and you got to get that done. And I think
right.
that'll be
I read your piece. It's
oh,
good.
thanks.
So yeah, the 100 days is an interesting marker. I mean, it's really
Mm,
kind of an arbitrary marker. I mean, I don't know if it's a media, something the media concocted a long time ago to
yeah,
use as a grading period. I mean, if you think about it, 100 days is not a lot of time to do a lot of things. I mean, you're
yeah,
starting your administration and there's a lot of moving pieces. It's hard to really get anything that's consequential normally going in 100 days. You can kind of see the beginnings of policy, but you don't necessarily see the full. Now, Trump, this is his second time around with a 4-year hiatus in between. And I think that he's thought a lot about it. He loaded his cabinet and his advisors with definitely very pro Trump, pro MAGA people. We don't have the a lot of the kooky people that he had the first time around. Oh, no more Omarosas and Scaramucci's and things
yeah,
like that.
yeah.
So it's not to say that there aren't going to be problems in the administration. We've already seen a few things where they've kind of blown up a little bit, but nothing super major and super scandalous as far as I'm concerned yet. Uh, but he has gone through this and looked at the second time around as a chance to kind of like put an imprint on America, set a course for MAGA America, and love it or leave it. This is what it's going to be, and he's really kind of bulldozed through this. And I'm not I'm not crazy about everything he's done, but yeah, look, immigration, A plus, whatever, A plus plus plus. Our border is what is it down to a 60-year low of border crossings. Uh,
Yeah,
you know,
just like a handful now. So you went from 6 and 7,000, I think a few days under Biden at like 10,000 crossings to just a handful or a dozen. So
yeah.
that's
So
just humongous.
yeah, so he's been very serious about things, and there are definitely people who will disagree about not just the border policy, but also, his policy with regards to deportations. But he had said he was going to deport people who shouldn't be in this country, uh,
Yeah.
whether or not they all should get due process and things like that. One of the things about this is that it looks like Trump is basically he's throwing kind of the kitchen sink in some regards and saying, okay, courts, federal courts, I dare you to weigh in on this, and then after you weigh in on this, I want to see if we can't escalate this to the Supreme Court,
Yeah.
and get the Supreme Court to give us a decision about this. So he's blowing up normal standards, right? I mean,
Mm.
there are things out here that I'm not sure exactly where we're going and what the courts will wind up eventually ruling. We know the federal courts. I don't know that you or I really want these courts weighing in on these matters.
Mm.
If SCOTUS issues a ruling, then that's kind of the law of the land, and we they take a very broad view of things, etc. But the federal courts, it depends upon which court. We know that the
Yeah.
liberals have gone judge shopping, right? I mean,
Yeah, and the DC circuit apparently is really bad. So certain ones. Now, not all the Trump district judges have ruled in his favor. You have a couple. In fact, the recent ruling against the Enemies Act, Aliens and Enemies Act, whatever, I forgot the official
yeah.
title. That actually it was a Trump judge ruled against him on that one. But most of them I've noticed, are Obama or Biden judges, but not all of them.
I mean, I,
So,
I think I think Trump has definitely been pushing the envelope on some of these things that he's done.
oh yeah, no, he is, but um, that's what executives do, and then you have to see what happens in the Supreme Court. I personally, I'm not a big fan of these district court injunctions for the entire nation. So and I think there are many Supreme Court judges that don't like it either. Um, but that I don't like so much. So hopefully the Supreme Court will take it up and take care of it one way or the other. And speaking of Supreme Court, Maryland, you guys have got a big case before the Supreme Court on
Yeah,
the parents' rights with the school, and I don't know what it was. What is it's a sex ed program, or it deals with LGBT or trans information for the kids.
yeah. So it's basically, I mean, it's here in Montgomery County where I live and where I
Yeah.
basically have grown up, and so it's basically a case where you have uh, the the school system has these LGBTQ, books and curriculum and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And they have decided that there will no longer be an opt-out policy. So
Yeah.
parents can't opt out of their kids out of these lessons or these classes or whatever they're doing. And so that has gotten the parents up in arms. But what's
Yeah.
interesting about this is that it's not like it's some conservative right wing, bunch of parents that really kind of started this. I mean, it's Muslim parents, it's Jewish parents. It's actually become a coalition of people,
Yeah.
some of them who would normally support Democrat candidates. And our school board in Montgomery County is a nonpartisan,
Yeah.
theoretically a nonpartisan board.
You're
But
like ours in Fairfax. Yeah.
it's almost all liberals.
Yeah.
It probably is all liberals at this stage. It, it's
Yeah.
it's only been, I think, a few times in my lifetime have conservatives had any kind of voice on the school board at all. And so this is this is not the first time uh, parents have fought back against the school board and kind of caught them off guard. But to actually have this case elevate to the Supreme Court has been, has been fascinating to see this, because the
Yeah.
school board is trying to defend what they're doing here, and it looks like, based on the oral arguments, that the judges, at least the conservative judges, the ones that are considered conservative, aren't buying the argument, right? The liberals are going to be the liberals, and they'll probably, you'll probably see a 6-3 ruling, maybe 5-4, but this is probably going to be something that the parents win on, based on
Yeah.
the oral arguments, unless something shocking happens between now and the end of the term in June, when they start announcing the decisions for the term. So one of the things too is that the attorney for the parents, uh, I know him. I mean, he's actually he's actually a member of my church. He lives in Silver Spring, but he works for the Beckett Fund for Religious Liberty.
Oh yeah.
So the Beckett Fund basically has taken up this case, um, and they're arguing this. So this is going to be interesting to see which way this goes. Though it looks like by initial, standards here, that it will go the parents' way, because the school board attorney apparently just didn't do a very good job of arguing the case.
I heard that. Yeah, I heard that.
They, so several of the conservative judges were kind of like asked questions, and he did not respond very well at all. So
Plus,
yeah,
yeah.
I,
Plus, the other
I,
argument, not to interrupt you, but the other argument that, well, if we let the parents opt out, no one will, almost like an admission. Well, nobody's gonna take the class
but
because of
here's
the
here.
demand.
Okay, now my kids have been out of the school system for a number of years now. My youngest just turned 33, so it's been a long time now since they've been in the Montgomery County school system. And the school system that I grew up in. So I went through the entire K through 12 experience, and all three of my children went through that experience. Not at the same schools that I did, because we lived in different areas than where I grew up. But when I can go back to when our kids were small, and I can't remember the exact. Well, so I must. Yeah, I think it's the youngest. I think it was when Stephen was in school. So when he was in elementary school, so you're talking, he's going to be. I guess at that stage, they were like the fifth grade. So that's what, 11, 10, 11, whatever. You know, they had a sex ed course that they were giving them, and there was an opt out, and we opted out, which meant that he
Yeah.
had to have an alternative curriculum, alternative study in order, do things. Uh, we had some, we had a friend there who's, uh, you know, was in that class, and accepted, and did not opt out. That's right, Craig. You're right on. So, but as he went through the class, he told my son, "I wish I didn't have to do that." He, he basically he felt that he was too young for that material that they were teaching. But what we saw at that point in time, and so this is 20 years ago, right, 20 more years ago, is just that the parents were asleep at the wheel. The school system, the school board said, "Here's a course." And maybe in one of the voluminous amount of papers that they would send home in a backpack or whatever, there was a permission slip or something that says, I want to opt out my child from this class.
Mhm.
Parents don't go through that stuff. They didn't pay attention to it. We have a lot of, two income parents, they're both working parents.
Yeah.
And so the default, means is that the attendance for those classes is probably like 98% or better, right?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't, you know, I wouldn't be surprised that even in today's world, whether or not we have a similar scenario, maybe not 98%, but say it's 90% that are just
Mhm.
not thinking about it, so that, the group of parents that is involved in the case in Montgomery County probably doesn't, is more likelihood does not represent a huge amount of the parents or the children in the school system at this point in time. But they're getting a big voice by getting the case heard in the Supreme Court. Uh,
Yeah.
is a school. So I don't know that the school board is worried, or the school system is worried that no one would do this. But now they might be now that this whole thing has been elevated to this level, because all of a sudden parents are like, wait, what? What just happened
Yeah.
here?
Yeah.
They're doing this. How come we didn't know about this? You know,
Yeah.
because really, I mean, if you talk to parents, and I don't think that Montgomery County is necessarily any different than any other county that kind of leans heavily liberal. So as liberal as we are, that just where the parents entrust the school system to take care of their children and educate them, and so that they can move up every grade and graduate and then go on to a good school and have a good career and whatnot and things like this. But what they're missing out on all this stuff is that in the meantime, if you're not actually watching like a hawk about what the school system is doing,
Yeah.
you will find out that your beautiful little Johnny and Jane, that you adore, as a 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year old, when they get to their teen years, when they go to middle school and when they go to high school, next thing they're the next version of AOC or Bernie Sanders or something like that, because the school system has managed to indoctrinate them while you were
Mm.
not paying attention, because you thought that that you could trust them to just give you, in essence, a fair and balanced viewpoint of whatever. But the curriculum, there's nothing that says the curriculum has to be balanced, right? There's nothing on
Yeah.
the books. We look at the teachers who teach. I mean, these teachers unions, we know what kind of power they wield, right?
Yeah.
So they're not about to teach a conservative curriculum at all. It's
Yeah.
it's not really what's in the best interest of the child. Uh,
Yeah.
so I think it's great that the parents are fighting back, but they should have been fighting back a long time ago. I mean, this is just another case of where you've missed something. You allowed the school system to kind of build this into their programming, and it's going to be difficult to get it out unless the Supreme Court says, look, you got to offer the opt out, and if they somehow waded into it and said, by the way, where do you actually have balance in this course? I mean, if you're telling them you're going to read all these LGBTQ books and all this stuff, is there other things that they're going to be able to read to counterbalance that? And you know, but the bigger point for me is that, what is this stuff doing in elementary schools?
Yeah. Oh, I agree. And for me, when we were growing up, and I know this is may annoy people to talk about when I was a kid, but we would really have, as I recall, is just a basic sex ed class, and that took place really into junior high, really, or middle school, and that was about it. And then progressively, it's getting more and more. But I just don't think school has any business involved in. I mean, I can understand basic reproductive science and um, basic what they used to call the birds and bees in our parents and grandparents' days. I understand that, but when they get into whether it's homosexuality or the trans life stuff, they really have no business talking about that sort of stuff or getting involved at all in it. And it's interesting that the conservative argument is already so much on the defense because we're now talking about conceding. My position would be there's no place for any of that in our schools. But like in Florida and the other places, all it is well, not fifth graders. It's you conceded everything. In other words, the principle that it should be taught in school, we've given up on. We're just trying to delay it more towards graduation. So that just strikes me as kind of odd and hard for me to figure out how they've gotten so far, how the schools have gotten so far with this stuff.
Well, I mean, I think part of that though it goes to your school boards and your teachers unions and things like this, where
Yeah.
you have the liberal lefties that control a lot of these mechanisms, and if they have control of those, they have the levers there, they are going to throw out what they want to do. Um, I don't know if you ever met or heard of Pete LaBarbera.
I know the name. Yeah.
Okay, so Pete is a champion of defending uh, against the gay agenda, and
Yeah.
and I admire Pete. Pete worked for AIM and Accuracy in Academia, and think, we've known him. Um, he's all in. He's made a lot of personal sacrifice to fight the gays back, on all fronts,
Mhm.
uh, and severely underfunded when he goes out on his own, and all
Mhm.
these kinds of things. But he's been a champion, and he uh, he kind of introduced me to to what we saw. I think Pete and I went to yeah, well, I think we flew to Utah one
Mhm.
year, and we went to the Gay, Lesbian, Straight uh, Teachers Education Network. So it was GLSEN.
Mhm.
They've dropped the T out of that. I think it's now GLSEN or whatever.
Mhm.
Uh, but that was an eye-opening experience. Uh,
I
and,
bet.
and we were there observing, and
Okay.
we were because the so you had state legislators from all over the country. This was decades ago. This was the mid '80s, right? And you had state legislators, you had gay activists, and all this stuff like that. And so it was a weekend full of workshops and speeches about really how they would push their agenda
Mhm.
into the school systems. And you know it was amazing. Now Peter was well enough known that he couldn't really hide too well.
Okay.
I I still remember we were at one of the keynotes, and he's sitting in the back, and he's just trying not to be like anybody. He doesn't sit in the front. He's out in the back. He's trying to kind of hide so he can kind of listen and get his notes down or whatever. And the speaker, was from one of the leading, lesbian gay groups, called him out, from this pulpit, from the podium and everything like this. I'm like, well, your cover's blown, but mine's still intact. Uh,
Okay.
you
Wow.
know, but what they were doing, for example, one of the things I do remember, well, I remember a couple of things I remember. One thing I remember is that they were talking about like in Nebraska, and they were talking about how they couldn't get a law passed in Nebraska because it was so conservative to get like gay lesbian information, curriculum, into the system.
Mhm.
And what they did was is that they turned it around. How they managed to get it through was that they went back and they said, so this means you're discriminating, you're for the bullying and blah 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 of gay lesbian students and things like
Mhm.
this, right? So they put the conservatives on their heels. The conservatives didn't have a really good answer for that.
Mhm.
So they were able to turn votes around because they made them put them on the defensive. I mean, you're talking about how giving up kind of a thing like that, we gave ground. That's
Yeah.
exactly what was happening 30, 40 years ago. And
Yeah.
and they had the other thing, one of the other things they had in their toolbox was a little film, a documentary film. It was called It's Elementary. And anytime they had some kind of hotline or something. Anytime they got a report about like, oh, there was some kind of discrimination, from one
Mhm.
of the teachers
Mhm.
of a gay student, or they had maybe said a gay epithet or whatever. Then came the sensitivity training, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right? But also what they could do is that with this little film is that they would then play this thing
Mhm.
for them, and then and when you watch this film, I mean, this was they used a friends school. So we know what the friends school people are like, right? I mean,
Mhm.
they're the peaceniks kind of thing, and they're very, they're not conservative. Uh,
Yeah.
and so they had this thing, and they actually showed these activists going into like an elementary school assembly at some friend school. I think it was in Boston, and then asking them, about kind of gay and lesbian. Is this okay? Is this okay? I mean, some pretty specific questions of 5, 6, 7, 8 year olds
Ah.
who had
Well,
no idea, no
yeah.
clue. I mean,
Yeah.
you're basically talking to them about sexuality at an age where this is totally inappropriate in my
Oh
opinion,
yeah.
but they did that. And I know in Utah they forced one of the school system in Utah, because of all this nonsense, to actually have that available as one of their resources to show,
Mm,
and so this is what it was. I mean, this is not something that began 5 years ago or 10 years ago even. It's been going for 30 or 40 years, but it's just been weeding, and it's kind of just getting its way into our school systems and everything else, so that it becomes a normal thing to have. I mean, when I went to University of Maryland back in the late 70s and early 80s, you know, that was, to me, I think, the beginning of feminist studies, and gay and lesbian studies were starting
yeah.
to slowly kind of gain hold, to the point where that's a fairly regular thing at a lot of colleges and university, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so where what has happened to our society?
Yeah, I know it is odd, but you know, in terms of naivete, I don't know if I should admit this, but when I was a kid, you talk about kids having no idea what they're talking about, what they're indoctrinating with. I remember the old show Three's Company, where Jack was living with two girls, and that was not kosher, so he had to tell the landlord that he was gay. But I didn't know what the heck that meant. I enjoyed the show, but I didn't know what it meant, and that's why it just seems interesting that. And I was older than some of the kids you're talking about here, and what they're pushing on the kids now in terms of trans stuff. And I mean, kids don't know what the heck to make of this.
Yeah,
So they're just starting too young.
yeah, that's an interesting comment about the Three's Company, because
Yeah,
I kind of tend to agree with you, though. Is that if I think back upon it, it's like Jack Ritter, playing that, right, and it just seemed like they the writers put that in there, but the gay movement was not very big at that point in time, right?
yeah,
So it didn't really have much of an effect. I mean, it's not like Jack did a lot of things to show that he was going to be going out and dating men or whatever,
yeah,
and doing all this stuff.
yeah,
It was just the ploy, so he could be in this house. I guess
yeah.
what was it, because the rent was cheap or something? I don't remember exactly what the reason was.
They need another roommate, and they like Jack, I
Yeah.
guess, Chrissy and
Yeah. So, I
Janet.
mean, yeah, I mean, but for yeah, from you're younger than I am, but I kind of feel the same way you did. It's like, okay, that's it didn't bother me, to say that he was gay, because they just said he was gay, but he didn't do what television does today when characters are gay, right? There's a lot of there's now a lot of on-screen kissing. There's so many gay characters, in television, in
Plus the flamboyancy, we didn't have that on Three's Company. He wasn't
yeah,
flamboyantly gay.
yeah. I mean, there's some new show, and I can't remember the name of it, but it has Nathan Lane and a few
Oh
other guys, and I think that's all about kind of a comedy with nothing but gay characters, kind of a thing like that. Um,
yeah,
I mean, some shows have done fairly well with kind of gay character leads and stuff like that, um, or ones that seemed to be a little bit gay but played straight people and things like that. But now it's just front and center, and there's a lot of flaunting of that. It's if you want to raise your family, uh, you probably don't want them watching a lot of standard television anymore. And
yeah, no,
it's just changed so much. I mean,
yeah,
we can do the whole Dwight thing and say, Archie Bunker, with
yeah,
and Sanford and Son, and all these programs, The Jeffersons, which Dwight loves, and Good Times, which Dwight loves, and stuff like that.
yeah,
You know, those shows were just fun. I mean, look, how innocent, how naive was I as a child? I was probably about a 10-year-old watching the Flip Wilson show, and I don't even know if you
yeah.
ever, and where Flip had his character Geraldine
Okay,
dressed up as a woman, and it
yeah,
was hilarious. Everybody loved it. It's like,
yeah,
and I didn't think anything of it as a 10-year-old.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, a lot of that was over my head. I mean, the Jack and being, I just didn't pick up on. I still like the show, but I didn't really pick up on any of that. And even the jokes when Stanley Roper would make fun of Jack for being gay, kind of, and the way he would take it and twist it and turn it around, and yeah, it was different. But today, I think you're right. TV is, yeah, it doesn't have the same innocence that it did when we were kids, and it doesn't have the same sensitivity to people's values or traditional values. Today, I think the television just mocks it. It's all mocking, mocking, mocking.
Yeah.
Um,
So, when I was a kid too, I mean, I can go back to other shows that I watched, uh, you know, which are available probably somewhere in reruns. I mean, Dennis the Menace, Jay North, the lead, just died recently, and
yes,
Leave
yes,
It to Beaver, Ozzie and
yeah,
Harriet, Fathers Knows Best. There were
yeah,
a lot of these classic programs that were out there, Family Values, and just, but they were, for even for a good portion of my childhood, it's entertainment,
oh
right?
yeah,
And so even if you have Three's Company with the gay character, it was still
yeah,
entertainment without sending what happened to be now, what's now coming to be the political message, right?
yeah,
So their political messages, started to become more front and center with some programs, and it has grown. There's still that belief that, well, the lesbian gay movement needs to have lesbian gay characters out there because they represent so much of the United States population. Balderdash,
yeah. It's
it
like
doesn't.
4%, 5%.
Yeah, right. But they are, they how long have they been using the 10% plus figure, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's true.
they want to use that as a thing, like, because 10% seems like, oh well, that's a pretty good number, but every time they survey, it's down in the low, yeah, maybe up to five, so, somewhere around
Yeah,
3 or 5 and things like
yeah,
that. So I think it seems to be kind of stuck in that range. So yeah, don't give me that nonsense with all of that. It's
yeah,
your writers, the networks, they're all behind, pushing out this political agenda.
yeah.
Um, I don't know if you remember a program called Cagney and Lacey,
Oh yeah,
and so I mean I love detective shows, but
yeah,
I started to get sour on that show when I started to actually realize what they were doing there, and they took a very liberal position on
yeah,
issues, and they pushed those issues, apartheid in South Africa, gun control, that all
yeah,
became messages with a liberal position, and I'm like,
yeah,
no can do anymore, and
yeah.
everything like that.
And I think the other thing is that they try to create a false reality. That's why most people think I mean, if you do polls, most people think the gay population would be like 20, 30% or so. But no, it's very small because it's just inundated on television with all this sort of reality about the country, which doesn't exist.
Right.
And
They've normalized it so that you think it's bigger than it is,
yeah,
right?
that's right.
So that it's like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I've got so many gay friends and things like this. I'm fine.
Mm,
I have gay friends too, and it's like, I'm fine with that. I don't agree with lifestyle and things like that. But
yeah,
they've made their choice. I make my choice, and that.
yeah,
But don't throw it into my face, you
yeah,
know. And make me try to accept that viewpoint and that
yeah,
lifestyle.
yeah,
That's just not going to fly at
yeah.
all. So
But yeah, it's just, and then and the other thing, getting back to the schools, is that even if I believed it's necessary to teach, and I don't, that it's necessary to teach this sort of stuff to the children, eventually they can learn all kinds of things on their own. The school ought to be focused on reading, writing, math, science, engineering. That's what it should really be focused on. Just teach the kids. Don't get involved in socialization. Don't get involved in trying to um, create the new person. Or it's just some things should be left to the schools. Some things left to parents and the church. Some things just left to the student to find out on their own or to investigate or research. That's up to them. It's just doesn't seem to be a role for the public schools.
yeah, well, the old reading, writing, arithmetic
Yeah,
doesn't really hasn't really done much. I mean, we have some schools, some where they have STEM classes and things like that, and there are some. But there is too much of this. A lot of times to me, sometimes I think, okay, what are you guys trying to do? Are you trying to create an army of social justice warriors?
Yeah.
Maybe so, you know,
Yeah.
without some of the parents even realizing it. I mean, I know plenty of parents, you know, social media. I mean, social media, there's a good side and then there's a bad side. There's things that can happen, and we have a friend of ours who's got they have what, 5 kids, but the
Mhm.
young, the second to youngest one. So he he spent a lot of time. He got in. He kind of fell into a love of like film production and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
he's got some skill there, which is great. But
Yeah.
on the other hand, as he delved more into it and spent more time on social media and like YouTube and things like that, he he's turned into basically a liberal, you know.
Yeah.
And his parents are very conservative,
Yeah.
and his siblings are. I don't know that they're overly political, but they probably lean conservative along their parents' lines. But this
Yeah.
is, to me, it seems to happen more often than not that you wind up with uh, you know conservative parents finding out that their kids have started to skew liberal, rather than you
Yeah.
have a lot of liberal parents finding their kids are skewed conservative. I mean, I think this is where one of the areas where we miss Rush Limbaugh. You know,
Yeah. That's true.
Rush Rush, I think, did some of the greatest work on convincing young minds as to
Yeah.
the evils, of liberalism. And if he was around today, I mean, look, if he lived long enough, I mean, there's just a lot of things I think that wouldn't have happened that have happened as a
Yeah.
result. I think he would have. There's a lot of things that he would have taken care of. Uh,
Yeah.
that
But
he was getting.
we should be a little optimistic. I've seen polls where younger generations are becoming more conservative. That you have the millennials, but then behind them that are coming up in polls showing are a little more conservative. So um, I think there's a backlash to the left, but I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully they'll stay
You keep
conservative.
is it the cat?
Yeah, Wrigley is yapping, and Simba's around.
They are they're quite active and they do a lot of things, don't they?
Yeah, my friend's cat. So they're good. Wrigley's a nice cat, but he's a talker. So he was yap yap yap.
It's funny, yeah.
He's a talker, but a nice cat. Maine Coon cats tend to be bigger, but he's a Maine Coon, but he's not all that big. So he's more on the smaller side of a Maine Coon. But Maine Coons can be kind of big, but they're good looking cats. But you almost have to trim their fur because it's so thick and it gets so matted that he has to be trimmed. It's like a sheep. It's probably like wool.
I mean, look, cats shed hair like crazy anyway.
Yeah,
It's amazing,
yeah.
things like that. But you,
I must say I've always felt sorry for people who are allergic to cats because I thought they're great animals and how sad when you can't have a cat.
yeah,
But
I don't know. We've never had pets. My mother had she had a frightening experience when she was growing up in Japan with some, I think, wild dogs or something like that in her schoolyard. So
okay,
so she was scarred from a young age. So
okay,
never had a pet growing up.
okay.
Um, I'm fine with other people's pets. You
Yeah,
know, they're fine because it's like, okay, I can go visit or whatever and deal with that.
yeah.
My youngest son, he's got 2 dogs. One's a senior dog he got during the pandemic,
Okay.
before he met his wife and things like that. And his wife is like scared of dogs, but somehow she's putting up with 2 dogs now instead of just the one, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, and because the other dog is quite younger, and he's like a trail dog, and that dog is like crazy active.
Okay.
Versus, the senior dog is like, hey, whatever. He's old. He's just,
Well, and I never had a dog. My mother didn't necessarily want a dog because she figured it'd be a lot of work for her. Well, and also we'd need a fence. And she also figured she'd do most of the work. So she figured a cat's easier to deal with because they mostly want to be left alone unless they want food or something or out or in. They really are fine to be left alone. So it's kind of easier to deal with them, and you don't have to walk them.
What is an Akita? What is that?
Akita dog, I guess.
All right.
You know, the nicest dogs, and I'm not a dog person, but I babysat this one dog, and I never thought I would end up liking this breed. Poodles. They're very nice dogs, and they're very loyal. And I had an ex that her parents had a Great Dane, and I'm not a dog person, so when I first would see this big dog, as a Great Dane is so big, it'd almost be a certain fear. But there's nothing to fear. Just despite their being so big, they're as docile as can be. They won't do anything to hurt you. But you see that dog, and you think, "Damn, that's a big dog," like a Scooby Doo, I guess. Basic
I
Scooby
think there
Doo.
was. I think there was a picture. I saw this on the news. I think it was a Great Dane.
Yeah.
It's in the Guinness Book of World Records as the tallest dog in the world right now. It's like over 7 feet.
Oh my God.
And then they pictured it next to the smallest dog, which was super tiny.
I know.
It was ridiculous. Okay, so here we go.
All right.
National Dog of Japan. And I went and I checked. And I was like, I know I've seen that dog before. So that's good because I know I've seen a few video shows or whatever. Some of the I'll call them J dramas for Japan dramas. Yes, and I have now that that refreshes my mind. I have seen those. I have seen them on some of these Japanese programs. So yeah, they're kind of cute.
Yeah, yeah. And even a Dutch Hound is kind of cute, like a hot dog, the hot dog dog,
Yeah.
that long body, legs.
Yeah, we had a friend of ours that had a dachshund, and they were just
Dachshund. Yeah, that's
yeah,
they're good.
it was like, oh, they are cute. I mean,
Yeah, they're cute dogs.
does my sister-in-law have a dog? What kind of dog she got? Anyway, she's got a cute little dog, but it's the dogs are all work. See, my only complaint about cats, besides the shedding, is just that they're jumpers. They
Yeah,
go everywhere, and it's like if I'm visiting a friend's house, it's like I'm not really sure where the heck the cat's going to be.
yeah.
The cats have got amazing skills to get from the floor to a counter to a cupboard. I don't even
Oh
I have no idea how they are able to get to those bounds.
yeah, they're fast. Yeah,
They are something else. So
yeah, they're jumpers.
yeah.
But
So my I will say this as we close the pet segment
oh yeah,
is the here we go.
you don't want to be chastised by Dwight for
Hey,
straying
right.
from politics.
We've got a lot of different stuff in here, but
Uh,
we've still mixed the politics in here.
yeah.
And so my granddaughter, my oldest granddaughter, wants a dog. She wants a dog, and my daughter, having not grown up with a dog, and now the mother of 7 children under the age of 13, has told her and says, "You can get a dog when you move out of the house." Yeah, right. So so that granddaughter's 11 going on 12.
Okay.
So the best she can do is have lots of stuffed, pet dogs,
Yeah.
and she's got her parents bought her a 3D printer, so she prints out little dogs
Oh wow. Okay.
on the 3D printer. She actually gave me one like a year ago, so it's pretty funny
Okay.
with all that. So yes, so we have pets and politics, lots of different things. But I still want to say about President Trump and the 100 days thing too, though, is that immigration, yes. I thought DEI has been extremely important. I think
Yeah.
he's done a good job there. You mentioned tariffs.
Yeah.
That is definitely an iffy issue, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's in terms of how we're going and doing on this.
Yeah.
But I'm actually kind of surprised as to how this is turning out. I mean, I didn't think that Trump could keep these blanket high tariffs in place. He threw that out there, spooked the stock market,
Yeah.
kind of backed off on there. He's brought several countries to the bargaining table. I think China is really the real target. But I mean, look, Trump even said 145% is high. He doesn't really think it's going to stay that high.
Yeah.
I think they figure something out, but they do have a limited amount of time of kind of figuring out where they want to go with that. I think because we're in May. You're going to affect the Christmas season very soon if it hasn't already started to ripple in here, because container ships a lot of times will take 6 months to go from China to the U.S. port. And so the time every day brings us much closer to the Christmas selling season, and to the point where it's like, are we, who's are they going to bring that many products in, and everything like this. I don't really have a problem of trying to level the playing field with China, and everything like that. But I think that my preference is to look, if you're going to use tariffs, which I'm not crazy about, is that use them kind of like you did in your first term, is use them very strategically, and
Yeah.
just kind of go this and this and this, and you don't have to go and say, here's my chart of all the tariffs we're going to issue across the board. I mean, look, let's switch to what's happened as a result in Canada, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I think this is a Trump problem. You know, all the stuff that he's done with Canada, 51st state and
Yeah.
all these other things. I don't really care if the Canadians take American products off the shelves that much. They want a knee-jerk reaction. That they want they want to sell their homes in America, their vacation homes, or they don't want to come to the U.S. I mean, it will have some impact, on the tourist trade and some of those things. But the 51st state to me was never going to be a reality to begin with.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but all of these things that he does, where was that election? We had Justin Trudeau was on the ropes. He
Oh, yeah.
resigns. Pierre Poilievre has got a 20-point lead. The Conservatives have a 20-point lead in the polls, right?
Yeah.
So then Mark Carney comes in to succeed Trudeau,
Yeah.
and he takes a very strong stance against Trump, and they can tie. They make it seem that Poilievre is nothing but a Trump clone, kind of thing like that, even if he isn't, and they lose. And then Poilievre, I didn't see the final results, but the early results had him losing his own seat in Parliament. So
Yeah.
it was a disaster in that sense. Now, the Liberals they didn't win enough seats to have a majority to govern on their own. They need a coalition to govern.
Yeah.
But there was a huge opening for the Conservatives in Canada, and it got lost, I think, largely because of the trade war that we didn't have to necessarily have, right? I don't
Yeah.
think it's too bad. I mean, Trump's always going to find a way around. It's like, that wasn't my fault.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, I think it's one thing if you have a trade disputes. I'm fine, having have that hash that out. But the gratuitous 51st state stuff, the thing, Canadians are always very sensitive about being swallowed up by America. Um, Trudeau's father, or at least listed on the birth certificate, his view was being next to America is like sleeping next to an elephant, and I forgot how he put it, but it was like you're fearful of in some ways for Canada to be absorbed by the United States. That's why when the Canadian kids they travel, they put a little they sew a Canadian flag to their book bag to say, well, I may look like an American, but I'm a Canadian. And so publicly for Trump to talk about the 51st state and Governor Trudeau, it just kind of annoys them. And I'm not sure that really helps. And actually, in this case, the election, it saved the Liberal Party. They
Yeah.
were all throughout 24, they were looking like they were going to lose. And then he does that. And I guess his view is I'm a conservative. You're a conservative. And I have conservative friends in Canada. So I wanted the conservatives to come back in Canada. Trump may not look at it that way. He may figure he's not looking at it from a partisan standpoint. Maybe he just doesn't really care who runs Canada. But I was sorry that the Conservatives lost in Canada because they had a great chance to come back, and that was blown because of Trump's trolling of Canada, which just seems odd to me, and I don't think he gains anything from it. It's like he liked to troll them for some reason, and I don't know what to gain. And I would just say this as well about making Canada a 51st state. I don't know why it would be in our interest maybe not in theirs, although Trump's arguing it's in their interest to avoid tariffs. But I mean, if we had Canada, if Canada were part of the United States, I mean, it would just help Democrats in the country. And I don't think Canada now. Maybe if we were to pick off, say, Alberta or British Columbia, and they joined, and we gave them 2 Senate seats, then it wouldn't hurt the balance too much. But if you take all of Canada in, it's not that big of a country, but it's like 40 million people or whatever. We're not going to be winning national elections if that's the case. Kamala Harris, well, I don't know if she would have won, but it'd be hard for us, I think.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like there's from a political standpoint, there's it doesn't help the conservatives to take over Canada.
Yeah, that's true.
Look, I think we were fine, with how things were in general. I mean, nothing's ever perfect, but you don't need to troll them. And that only made like any other country, you have national pride.
Yeah, that's right.
And you hit them right there, and you just turned people against it. I mean, I'm sure there's some conservatives in there that said, well, forget this. I mean, it's like I would have voted for the conservative candidate, but right now I'm voting for the Liberal Party because he's standing up to Trump, and maybe we won't be great, under this Liberal Party rule continuing. Maybe it'll still be a continuance of the Trudeau regime, but they were just, there was just a bridge too far for them. They were just kind of like, that's it. I can't. You're now attacking, my country, my homeland, my values, et cetera, whatever. Forget it. This is absolutely ridiculous. And it's look, if he can throw that out there and troll them, and then just never say another word about it, and I'd be fine.
Yeah.
But that's not Trump. He has to keep doing that. He goes, boom, boom, just poke the bear.
Yeah. Plus, they're a big trading partner. They're probably our biggest. So I don't know why take that jabs at them. I will just say this: 2 things. My favorite dig against Canada, I thought the funniest line was, and I probably have already said this on the show. Al Capone was being investigated because he had Canadian ties. And when the feds were investigating him and they interrogated him, they wanted to know about those Canadian connections, and they said to Capone, "We know you have connections in Canada. What about your connections there?" And Capone simply said, "Canada? I don't even know what street that's on." So I thought that was a beautiful dig. But no, it's. I mean, it is a great country, but there's no reason that we should make them a 51st state. That's just not smart.
So I left this on the screen. If you can see this, American Needs from Craig gets back to manufacturing again. I mean, we've talked about this kind of on the show before, right? I mean, look, there's only going to be a limited amount of reindustrialization, in America. I mean, that's just we cannot get everything back again. Now, Craig has got another comment right after that. Yeah, I mean, he's got a couple of interesting comments here, but the companies are trying. I mean, I was just reading an article in the Wall Street Journal about a company that has 95% of the pieces, the manufacturing process, deals with like American parts. But that last 5%, they're struggling to find an American factory that can actually make these ball bearings, in this case, not only as cheaply as the Chinese, but at all. And so this is one of the things about the tariff policy that I don't think that the administration has thought through very carefully. It's just that the supply chains are very complicated for products. And so you can go out there and you can say, buy American, bring it back into America, manufacture. We want it made in America. You can say that and I'm fine with that. But making that happen is going to be very, very hard.
Yeah, you're right. And the other thing is we lost some of those manufacturing jobs for a good reason. You and I are old enough to remember the Pintos. The days when our Chevrolet produced a lot of bad cars. And so what happened is in some ways, it was good when we had the rise of the Japanese automakers, because that improved us to some degree. But we also lost a lot of those jobs, and for good reason. We're slipping a great deal in quality, and I just don't know that you're going to be able to bring back that much. I don't think Akron again is going to be the tire capital of the world and these sorts of things. And so I'm not trying to poo-poo the effort of Trump, but I think it's sort of limited in how much we're going to be able to bring back, and even to have the people do these jobs. And in some ways, some of the jobs, it's probably good to offshore anyway, depending on the manufacturing job, because uh, we can get a lot of stuff cheaper and then focus on other areas. So I'm not a globalist, but I think there are some rational reasons for losing some manufacturing. There's a rational reason for that in terms of cost and
Yeah,
getting
well,
people.
I mean, look, I mean, I think that, if we make good quality products, if we had made good quality products on a consistent basis, then I
Yeah,
think we would have kept a lot of those things. But yeah, but over
yeah,
time, quality slipped.
yeah,
And the Japanese were able to produce things at a higher quality. Koreans could produce certain things at higher, so that the Chinese, it's not about higher quality, it's just about cheap. I mean,
yeah,
now you have Apple and things like that. They're looking at Vietnam for a majority of the production of iPhones and stuff like that. It'll come to America. You know,
yeah,
how do you compete? And that's probably a whole nother argument. With $2 an hour wages that are being paid in Vietnam.
mm,
Even if you can bring it back, but now you're faced with $20 an hour jobs that'll probably wind up somehow getting unionized at some
yeah.
point in time. You
Or
know,
just use robots at some point.
yeah, if some things can be done with robots, right, you could do that. But
Yeah,
it's a very tricky process, I think, to do that. It is, and it's not going to happen overnight. So you need to have a long runway. It's like, you say, you can't just slap dash this 46% tariff on Vietnam and think that all of a sudden manufacturing is going to rush back to the United States for the stuff
yeah,
that Vietnam is sending us. We're buying from there. Uh, but if you give them some time, I think we can see some of it come back and find a happy medium where these things are going on. So now, right? I think what David's saying here, and then Craig. I mean, yeah, I mean, have Americans not become somewhat lazy? I mean, we like cheap products. Craig said
yeah,
earlier, that we don't need to import as much as we do. We do import way too much.
yeah,
When stuff got cheap, what happens? The mentality of Americans is that I'll buy that because I don't necessarily need it, but boy, it's
yeah,
such a good deal. And
yeah.
then
That's right.
we wind up with houses full of stuff
Yeah,
that are cheap, that are broken, we would never use, and then
yeah,
we don't even bother to throw it away.
yeah.
Sometimes.
I saw. Speaking of that, I saw this thing on eBay because I always go to eBay, and um, it was a miniature, like a mock replica of a highway sign for Wendy's. And I thought that's kind of cool. Put that on my desk. But of course, I didn't buy it. But you're right. It's like cheap little stuff that we buy because, like you said, it's cheap, and that's why people buy it. So, um, but a lot of that, it just wouldn't make sense for us to deal with a lot of this stuff. Now, I think some auto jobs are good, and to the extent that we can bring some of those back, I think that's good. But I just don't think we're going to bring back the America you and I grew up in, the manufacturing sort of
Yeah,
ability.
and we have Japanese cars being manufactured in America.
Yeah, we do.
So
The Toyota. The story I heard about that, it was Reagan that said to the Japanese, he said, "Listen, I'm a free trader. I don't want to do this, but Democrats control Congress, and they're looking at more tariffs. So if you bring some manufacturing back here, you can avoid that." So that was really a Reagan thing, and Trump really is just adopting his policy in that regard, that strategy of bringing back jobs.
yeah, but I mean, the other part, the thing is that sometimes Trump, when he says, we're going to rake in so much on tariffs, we won't have to have income taxes. It's like,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Well, it's our money. It's like when he says you're going to get rich on tariffs. Well, I mean, we're going to be paying them, so it's our money, really.
Yeah, right,
Uh,
exactly. He said, we're paying more because of the tariffs. Then you're
right.
just going to, you say, okay, but you don't have to pay income tax. It's like, exactly how does this net out?
Yeah, it's a tax. Yeah, it's in effect a tax, which is fine, but
Yeah,
just say that it's a tax.
yeah.
Don't treat it as if someone else pays the tariff.
Well,
And the
yeah, and
consumer.
Trump's reaction to that whole thing with that Amazon Hall division, where they floated the idea of putting up the price, adding the tariff to show you how much the tariff would increase the price, and then
Mm,
Trump went ballistic on him, that
mm,
this was terrible and all this stuff like that, and they pulled back. But that's transparency, right? I mean, it's
yeah,
like show the people. I mean, if you're gonna put a tariff on there, I mean, go ahead and show people what this tariff does to the cost of their product. The,
yeah,
the Chinese are going to get hurt by this. I mean, the Sheins and the Timus, which have just flooded the market with cheap stuff, you
yeah,
know, they're having to raise their prices, so their sales are probably bound to go down. And I'm not going to cry about that.
yeah,
I've never bought a product from any of those guys, but
yeah,
it's interesting to see how this is all going. And Liberation Day, we're a month after, it's a month since Liberation Day when Trump put this whole thing to effect. Market had a lot of gyrations,
yeah,
and now it's there's still uncertainty, but it's recovered a decent amount, right?
yeah. We
So
haven't gotten quite back to whole, but you're right. It's stabilized, and I was looking at my retirement funds, and it's come up. It's still behind, but it's come back a little bit, and the market's not as choppy. But
yeah,
I think part of the reason it's not as choppy and it's come back is that the signs are that Trump may be softening, that he's making exceptions and he's willing to negotiate. Because the reality is, free trade has been very good to us, and I know we try to. I know we've lost a lot of jobs. I know NAFTA could be a little rough, but overall, we're still doing fine because of it. And trade is a good thing. World trade is a good thing, and the market knows that. So uh, they're not going to be thrilled when you get into trade wars.
yeah.
So
I mean, we can't survive on just the stuff that we manufacture.
yeah, yeah,
I mean, and it goes beyond just clothing,
mm,
and a car. I mean, it's fruits and vegetables that we can't grow here. We don't have the climate for it or the land for it or whatever,
yeah,
stuff like that. So there's all kinds of effects that it has on our daily lives, and all
yeah.
that. All right, we've gone past the final thought stage,
Uh-oh.
so we'll do final thoughts.
Well, I'll just conclude. I'll be very brief. The thing I put this in my piece on Substack with the 100 days is Trump's rhetoric still is a little overdone, such as Liberation Day. Well, we're not really enslaved, With trade, we have trade deals. They may be bad, but it doesn't enslave you. You just decide to buy the products you want without the tariff. Um, well, my weekend should be good. Like I said, I'm going to a party for Trump's 100 days celebration. That's on Saturday in Fairfax, and I got my Substack. Check my Substack, davidshepard.substack.com. I guess that's the address, but David Shepard is it spelled, and find me. Otherwise, doing okay, and hopefully it'll be a nice weekend.
All right. I did want to ask you one question. I forgot. I, your opinion about the whole Glenn Youngkin, John Reed thing. Any quick
Oh,
thought?
yeah, it's sort of an unforced error because I don't know what Reed really did to for him to drop out. So it's just sort of dramatic to say I think you should drop out of the race when we don't really know exactly what it was picture wise, and maybe we don't want to see it, but exactly what the scandal is. And so many Republicans in Virginia asked me what's going on here. Why is he not backing our candidate? So it's a real mistake. And then Youngkin's now been softening that, saying, well, it's up to John if he wants to stay in or not. So it just sort of tarnishes him by you should step out of this race, but we don't exactly know what he did or as a reason to step out. So it's just kind of odd. Maybe we'll find out in the fall. But and John, everybody knew, and I've been on his show a number of times in Richmond. Everybody knew he was gay. He's openly gay. So what type of picture, the damaging picture, could they really have? So it's just a mess. It's just a mess.
Yeah. Yeah, that unforced error thing. That's what I was going to say earlier too about Trump with Canada.
Yeah.
So that to me that was an unforced error. You didn't need to do that. right?
Yeah.
It didn't have to do that at all.
Yeah.
I see Craig is chiming in with the Azalea Festival at the Landon School. I know Craig gets around a lot of things. He knows a lot of things about local stuff that's going on. I
Okay.
love azaleas. Ours don't. The ones in my house don't seem to grow as well as they did
Yeah.
from when I grew up. But we're not the green thumb people in our house. We kind of plant them and let them go.
Yeah.
And if they don't grow well, they don't grow well. Yeah, just quickly, just things that caught my eye. In addition, Gretchen Whitmer at Trump's rally in Michigan.
Yeah.
Trump
Wow.
brings her up on stage.
Wow.
She was not ready for that one.
Well, just
That
like the
was
Oval Office, she tried to hide.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah,
the
yeah. Well,
Oval
I mean,
Office?
but she
She's
was
by the
also
door.
trying to explain why she had that folder, in front of her face
Yeah.
for that other picture too. So it was pretty funny. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
thinking like, 2028. Hey, Donald Trump, are you trying to just already take the field out in 2028? You
Yeah.
know, yes. Okay, Craig, irises. We have some irises in our yard. Yes. This is now flowers in politics as well. So yeah, it's funny. I mean, she's up there, and Trump praises her and stuff like that. There's what a great way to just basically just destroy your potential 2028 candidacy. You can have
Yeah.
any future Democratic opponent for 2028 should Gretchen Whitmer want to run. It's just run the Trump reel.
Yeah.
Look what Donald Trump said about Gretchen Whitmer in 2025. He loved her. It's like,
Yeah.
so think about that. So that was one thing that caught my eye. We also had Dick Durbin announcing he's not going to run for a re-election. Jerry Connolly, because of his cancer, is not going to run.
Yeah.
Um, I don't think that the Durbin seat necessarily flips. I don't know that the Connolly seat would flip either. Uh,
No.
but these are longtime Democrats that have served in the Senate and the House, so there'll be some new faces of some sort there. And this other thing too, this is out of California because, for me, California and Maryland, they seem to always want to be.
Yeah.
This is post 2032. I didn't I see some story that Trump was selling, or there's a Trump store that they were selling a 2028 hat or something for Trump, which I did not confirm. So I don't know. Craig, can you confirm that for sure? I don't remember if that was actually somebody's trying to troll us or whatever, but I seem to recall seeing that in the news this week. But Gavin Newsom, we know how much we love California and their wonderful policies in California. Well, one of the things that's happening out there, they have high gas prices. So another good reason not to live in California is because their
Yeah.
gas prices are at least 30 cents higher per gallon than they are here.
Yeah.
And
That's bad.
yeah. So Craig says yes.
I couldn't afford to live there. Not to interrupt your time, but I don't know how people can live in California.
Well, you can't. I mean, you can barely live there at
Yeah.
$100,000, right? I
Yeah.
mean,
Jeez.
that's ridiculous,
Yeah.
to have to say that. But
Mm.
one of the things that's happening there with all the regulations is that refineries are closing in California
Mm.
as because of heavy regulation and things like
Yeah.
this. So Governor Newsom, as he preps maybe a potential 2028 run, is out there and he's saying uh, he's asked the energy board or whatever they call it, like, to ease up on the refineries. It's like this may be a little too late. Okay,
Yeah. Maybe too little, too
you're
late.
chasing businesses out of your state. You're chasing
Yeah.
people out of your state. You're losing, little by little. You're losing representation, right? You're losing seats in the House because your
Yeah.
population is shrinking,
Yep. Yeah.
the benefits are going to be states like Texas and Florida.
Yeah. That's
So,
right.
government, but this is these liberal policies that are destroying states like California. They wake up too late. They think, oh, everything is fine, and we already knew that California went from a huge surplus to a huge deficit. It's a
Mhm.
mess, you
Yeah.
know. And Gavin Newsom should be nowhere near the 2028 ticket, but the Democrats are a mess,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So did I put this up here and gave he said it's actually Mike Johnson. Is what he meant to say.
Mm.
So anyway, all right. So thanks, David, for being with me tonight.
Thank you.
I think we had a lot of good comments. That was a lot of
Yeah.
fun. We
God bless Craig.
kind of ran the gamut of different things in there. But
Didn't hear from Susan, so maybe she's got something to do tonight. I
she
don't know.
might be at the convention. I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
You know, I don't know what her. I don't know if she's a. I don't know if she's a delegate or an alternate or whatever. But anyway, so thanks everyone for joining us tonight. Hope you enjoyed our discussion. I'm going to be out of the country for the next 2 weeks, starting on Monday.
Have a safe trip.
Yeah, I'll be in Korea and Japan. So Dwight might try to turn this thing over to you, David. But
All right.
I don't know. I don't know what Dwight. This is Dwight's show. I don't know what happens. We don't have the Masoni's closing. So good night, everyone. Have a great weekend. And maybe the show will be on Friday. I do not know.
Hopefully. All right.
We'll see you then.